Welcome to Conversations with Cubit. And it is an absolute thrill to have you here tonight. And I want to express my deepest gratitude for your support of our weekly conversations. Listen, here in Oklahoma, we lock up more people for longer periods of time than almost any place on earth. So the question that we need to be asking ourselves is this: is this true justice? Well, tonight, I'm going to be talking with someone who has spent a lot of time thinking and researching criminal justice. So I'm really excited for tonight's conversation. Believe me when I say this conversation is going to be interesting, and it's also going to be hopeful. Maybe this is your first time joining our conversation. If so, I got to welcome you to the family. Yes, we consider you family. My team and I are really excited that you found your way here. And to all of our regular and loyal viewers, thank you for all of the words of encouragement that you send to my inbox, especially last week. Good comments last week. Please keep those coming. We are also live right now as we speak on YouTube, and you can find all of our past conversations on my YouTube channel. Just look up Conversations with Cubit, and once you get there, please subscribe. Hit the like button, please. We want to increase our viewers on YouTube, and so please help us out. We have all those great conversations posted there and with some really amazing people. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. But before we dive into tonight's discussion, I need to ask you a really small favor right at this moment. It's a big thing, but I need you to spread the word about this conversation. Hit the share button. Don't keep this conversation to yourself. Share this conversation with your community. Now, have you heard of Green Pasture Studios? Of course you have, especially if you are a devoted viewer of this show, because Green Pasture Studios serves as the home for Conversations with Cubit, acting as the backdrop for most of our live shows. So now we are not in the studio tonight because the studio is actively filming a huge TV series. I'm super excited about that, but let me tell you, Green Pasture Studios is in the business of making dreams come true through full-fledged movie productions, captivating commercials, and they even have a film training academy right here in Oklahoma City, the metro area. It's located in the Spencer, Oklahoma area. Be sure to look them up online, and you'll be mesmerized by all of their incredible work. Now, let me give a quick shout out to my friends here at OKC First Church for hosting tonight's conversation. The pastor and the folks at this church are phenomenal community partners. They are involved in so many things. I just need to have Pastor John Mindendorf on one of these days just to share about all the work that's happening right here in this church on Northwest Expressway. Now, I need to share with you my 3 very simple goals for having these weekly conversations. There are only 3, very simple. 1, I need to add value to people in my community. 2, I want to inspire you to believe in what people can become when we're willing to work together. And last but not least, 3, very simple, love people, period. All this means is I want you to be inspired, and I want you to get useful information and resources. And I want to celebrate individuals, groups, and organizations who are making a positive impact on our community. Every conversation here on Conversations with Cubit will be about information, inspiration, and hope. Joining me tonight is an amazing champion for kids, and she is a friend. Her name is Adrienne Hauck. Hauck. I said it wrong. Hauck. Adrienne is a licensed educational consultant specializing in implementing restorative practices in a variety of settings. As a campus administrator, she played an instrumental role in the development, implementation, and support of restorative practices. She holds a BS in Health and Science and a Master's of Education in Educational Leadership. Adrienne has worked in education for 25 years as a classroom teacher, assistant principal, and as an advocate for restorative justice. She currently works where I work at the Oklahoma City Public School District as an administrator and is the executive director of Graceworks Justice Center. Adrienne is married, has 3 beautiful children, and lives in Yukon, Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, folks, help me welcome Miss Adrienne Hauck to Conversations with Cubit.
Thank you for having me.
You're here.
I am here.
Did that make you feel special?
Absolutely. Thank
Besides
you.
messing up your name?
No, that's great though. Everybody does.
Everybody does?
Yeah, I'm used to it. Okay. I answer to everything.
Well, good. Thank you for coming on and thank you for sharing. You and I talked quite a bit about this subject on a couple of panels, before the panel and after. And so I've learned a lot from you. And I thought in our most recent conversation, we need to share what you know with the community. You've dove into this. People need to know a little bit about this subject. Okay. Restorative justice, criminal justice reform, all of that stuff. So we're going to get into that.
Okay.
But first I want to know about, where did you come from? Who are you? Give us a little background on you.
So I grew up on the south side of Oklahoma City. I attended Oklahoma City Public Schools.
Which one?
I went to Prairie Queen, shout out, Prairie Queen, Jefferson, and U.S. Grant.
Okay, graduated from U.S. Grant.
Graduated from U.S. Grant in 1990.
Okay.
Go Generals. And then I went to college at the University of West Florida in Pensacola, Florida. College scholarship got me there. Was fortunate enough to play ball.
What'd you play?
Played softball.
So you were down with the OU girls here recently?
We didn't go, but I watch them on TV.
Every night.
Boomer Sooner. Yeah. I love Patty Gaskell.
Okay. Yeah.
I love her.
Tell me more.
So grew up on the south side. My family, my dad was a police officer the majority of the time that I grew up in Oklahoma City. He then became an attorney. He passed away at a young age, but I took a lot of the things that he taught me, and I feel like a lot of the things that I learned from my dad and my mother has transitioned over my life. And so
You're an only child?
I have a sister. She is younger. She works at the Children's Center off of 39th Street.
Yeah.
And I have a niece and a nephew and 3 kids and a wife at home.
Right. Okay. All right. That sounds good. Tell me a little bit about, I want to know about how you got into criminal justice, this stuff, because you and I were serving on a panel, a couple of panels, and you just had tons of information about criminal justice, about restorative justice practices, places in other parts of the world that do this, the results, the data. You had all of this stuff. And then when I learned that we worked at the same place, I'm like, she's a school teacher. Why is she in this work? So how did you end up
passionate about criminal justice?
How?
I believe that everything is connected. As a public school educator, in my early career, I was a very punitive administrator. What I realized real quickly.
How did you get there? Did that have something to do with that?
I'm sure. I was raised you do this, you're going to get in trouble. If you do the crime, you're going to get locked up, and you're going to be held accountable for what you do wrong. And that's how I was raised. And that's how I started my career. So when you mess up at school, I'm going to hit you hard because that fixes things, I thought. But over the years, I realized that wasn't working. And so I started throwing myself, and I was fortunate enough to work for a district that allowed me to go and research restorative practices so we could bring it back into the school. Because ultimately, we were struggling with behavior at school, which then led me into criminal justice. A lot of the people at my school have family members that are in prison. When I was at one of the buildings, about 60% of our student body had at least one person in prison. That's a problem. So
that's also Oklahoma.
That's Oklahoma. And
right.
So when our kids our families are being broken apart, we're expecting our kids to be successful at school, but there's so many things that are going on that we have to overcome. And so that threw me into looking into criminal justice. Ran into a lot of nice people. I just became passionate about it because I believe wholeheartedly that all people, despite what they've done, have the right to be loved and they have the power to have hope, no matter what they've done. No matter what's been done to us, we can continue going.
I always say, no matter what, people have value whether they recognize it or not, right? And
right.
we just have to help them recognize their own value.
And often those that have offended others, so justice of all people, don't have that hope anymore.
Yeah.
And we need to do things different to help provide that hope so that change can actually happen.
Man, so is there, besides you being a teacher, being punitive, falling in love with kids, and then when you fall in love with kids, it's really hard to suspend them because you want them back in class because you see them on a path of learning, and you know when they're not there, they're not learning,
right.
and when they come back, you got to start all over, right? You got to bring them up to speed, and it makes it more difficult. So I understand how kids got you there, but you took this past the classroom. You learned about the entire criminal. Is there a personal story that connects you to this, to criminal justice?
Oh, yeah.
Besides just your police.
Absolutely. I mean, so throughout the last 3 or 4 years through this, I've met a lot of incredible people. I believe that we have to have a heart that's willing to change. I didn't go into this work knowing where I was going to end up, but I've met a lot of people that I would have, if I just heard what they have done, I would have never stepped foot in a conversation with them, just because of fear. But what I noticed once I began to have a relationship with them and have conversations with them and ask them what happened.
Not what happened to you, not what's wrong with you.
Exactly. When you ask that question, and so one of my good friends, his name is David, he will not mind me saying that. He is actually in Lincoln Correctional Center for first-degree murder charge. He will be spending the rest of his life in prison. But guess what? He still has hope, and he still has something to offer. And so he is utilizing a program that we utilize in the prison system in Nebraska. So knowing someone that I would have never spent a day with and now have a really close relationship with because of being willing to have a conversation.
Now, I would say that is relatively easy to say. And I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Absolutely.
Very easy to say for someone who has not been a victim, right? But a victim might have a different view on David.
Absolutely.
Even if they weren't a victim of David's crime, they might be able to relate to the victim of David's crime or think that they can, right? So talk to me from, and surely, I don't know if you've ever been a victim, but talk to me from the victim's perspective on making sure that these people have hope.
Okay, so restorative justice, the good thing about restorative justice, what it actually does is put the power back in the hand of the victim. Our current traditional criminal justice system often does not give the victim a voice. And so as a victim, I think hearing their story, hearing what harm was done to them, how did this crime impact them, is going to open up that door for more conversations that can later hopefully help them understand that the offender too was a victim at some point. We all are victims and we all have offended someone. It's a matter of holding ourselves accountable. So again, you're right, victims don't want to hear, let's give them grace because they killed my loved one. Extending grace doesn't mean we're excusing the crime. What we're doing is actually making it harder for offenders when they have to hold themselves accountable and help repair the harm that they've caused.
So what does that look like? So we're saying, what I hear you saying, or feel like you're saying, and you can correct me, live on the air, correct me. But so it's not so much what law did they break, it's what harm did you cause.
Correct. And
when you broke the law, or is it
before, during, after?
Yeah.
And so currently what our justice system asks is what law is broken and what are we going to do to the person that caused the harm? How much time? What is the consequence going to be? What restorative justice does, it flips the question. It's asking what harm has been done? What did you do to harm this person? And then how are you going to make amends and repair the harm that you've done?
And who decides that? Who decides that?
Well, it depends on the situation.
Okay.
So it depends on, sometimes the victim does not want to meet with the offender because the victim is in control of this situation, in control of restorative justice. So if the victim doesn't want to meet the offender, that's okay. We can still give resources to the victims, what they need to be better, to start healing, to provide some healing. And then we also, I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
Well, that's okay. What about, tell me about the...
I apologize.
No, you're fine. I'm tracking.
I'm
Because I have questions. I have
yeah.
tons of questions. What is happening to, okay, so we throw resources at the victim. The victim's in control,
Absolutely.
right? But what are we doing over here with this offender who, I'm the neighbor and I saw you harmed. You don't think you were, that was damage, and now I feel like because you relied on your offender, you make my home more susceptible to a crime from him.
I totally get it. And so here's the thing. Restorative justice does not mean there's not going to be consequences.
Okay.
We believe that consequences should happen. What those consequences end up being has nothing to do with restorative justice. I believe, so we are giving the resources to the victims. We are allowing the victims to be heard. In our current justice system, very seldom does our victim get to be heard. And so they don't get to explain to the courts. They don't, often plea deals stop the victim from being heard. Plea deals, I'm not gonna, neither here or there, plea deals good or bad, but it does stop victims from being heard. As far as the offender, let's say the victim does not want to participate in this conversation, that's totally fine. We utilize surrogate victim impact statements. So we bring victim impact statements into the classroom where we're working with the justice involved, so that we're bringing true Oklahoma stories into the classroom where the offenders are now hearing these stories. They're having to digest this information and fill out damage listening reports. What it does is help the offender understand the true harm that they've done. Often they don't feel like they have any victims. They are in a place where they are the victim. And so I can't think outside of me as an offender often. And so restorative justice also allows that offender the opportunity to grow. Doesn't mean they get out of the consequence. But
So in other words, we could still keep our same sentencing guidelines.
Absolutely.
Right, but we're just going to overlay a restorative practice over whatever currently is happening.
Absolutely. I am not going to sit here and say, don't put this person in jail for this reason. That's why I think restorative justice is a great thing. I think it is great for all sides, because it is, restorative justice is truly meeting the needs or the partial needs of the victim, the offender, and the community. We also need to inform the community of, once the offender has done their time and they've completed their sentence, we have to welcome them back into the community.
Yeah. What do you say about these, when the victim of the crime is the state of Oklahoma? And I'm thinking of drug crimes. Where do you stand? How does restorative justice deal when the state, who is very punitive, harsh,
Very harsh.
and I say harsh in comparison to the other states, right? I'm not saying we are, barbaric or anything. I'm saying we're harsher.
Very punitive.
we're
punitive.
than other parts of states. When the state is the victim, what is restorative justice? How does that work then?
The same way. I mean, we're a victim. And so as a victim, we need to have our voices heard. And so if you feel like...
Victim of a drug crime.
Okay, victim of a drug crime. What do you want to know about it? As far as like if I'm receiving, if you've committed, let's say DUI, and you ran into me. So you want to know as far as I'm a victim.
Well, okay, so in that case, Adrienne, if I'm DUI and I run into you, you're the victim.
Absolutely.
But if I'm DUI and the police stop me,
the community's the victim because of the sheer amount of damages that are spent on DUIs.
Okay.
And any drug offense, DUIs, drugs, the community is always going to be the victim.
Okay, and then how do we give the community voice in this case?
As far as drugs and alcohol?
Yeah.
Victim impact statements.
Okay.
So on our website, you can go on and share your story. So if you are someone in the community taxes go up because of drug crimes. Resources are being pulled off the street. I had a guy in one of my classes that actually had a DUI, and he got arrested while he was sitting at the light.
Right.
Didn't hit anybody, but he fell asleep at the wheel. It took us several hours for him to understand that the community is still you're still the victim because of how many resources you took off the street.
Right.
And so I think, first of all, state of Oklahoma, our voices need to be heard.
And when you say that, you're talking about the community.
The community.
Right.
What needs do we need? Have we asked those questions? Do we know what victims want? Most victims want to know the answer, why did this happen to me? Because they've been hurt physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, and then finally their control was taken away. They want to know the reason why. 95 to 99% of people are satisfied with restorative justice when it comes to victims.
Where are they doing restorative justice that Oklahoma ought to be looking?
Oh my goodness, there's over 20 states. There's over 20 states currently doing it. Colorado does great. California, San Diego area, Chicago. But then you go overseas, New Zealand does an amazing job. Belgium, Ireland, Canada. There's a lot of places doing it right.
What's different about our prisons in New Zealand?
New Zealand used to be had one of the most crime rate at one point, especially with youth. And they started family group conferencing to address youth crime. It has dramatically reduced crime in New Zealand. But the reason is because throughout the whole process, they're getting proactive services. They're getting service from the time that they're arrested until the time that they're finished. They're getting ongoing services so that they can continue to get better. We're not providing that here in the States.
So what I hear you saying there is, not only are we giving them a consequence for being an offender, but we treat them as if they need help so that they will not reoffend.
Absolutely.
We go to the root of
the problem.
We go, okay, you got to go to the big house. But while you're in the big house, we're going to serve you and treat you so that you don't end up harming someone else and causing yourself this own discomfort of being without freedom.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's part of the whole restorative justice. It's helping people they continue to have value. So many people, I specifically, and I'm sure this will cause a little bit of uproar, and that's okay because I think we have to have conversations. County jail. Let's talk about county. I'm going to tell you one thing that I know that will immediately fix county issue. It's not going to fix it all. We need to treat them with respect, quit treating them like animals. Right. And what does that look like?
Yes, what does that look like?
What can we do? One suggestion, how about go so many days, 60 days, 90 days without a write-up, and we'll give you a face-to-face conversation with the family member. How hard is that? It's not that hard, but you give them a reason to behave and give them a reason to change. Most people do. If all you have to do is sit in a jail cell and not change, you're going to come out worse.
How much of this is going to be dependent on how we treat mental illness?
Mental illness is one of the biggest reasons crime happens. At least with drug and alcohol, we have to have more beds. We have to put the resources where they are. Mental illness, if we can get mental illness under control, that's going to help with our addiction. If we get our addiction under control, that's going to help with a lot of the crime that we see consistently. We have a lack of emotional hygiene. We have a lack of emotional hygiene. We spend millions of dollars on teaching kids ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, how to read. How many of us teach our kids how to emotionally regulate? I know as a parent, I spend time teaching my kid how to brush their teeth, how to brush their hair, how to stay clean. I don't spend a lot of time teaching them to talk about feelings. That's the piece that's missing.
Very interesting. So you've transformed what your research and your learning to, you've taken it and put it into action.
Absolutely.
Graceworks Justice Center. Talk about that.
Graceworks Justice Center. So we're really excited. It's a nonprofit. It's just now starting. I feel like we've been working on this for years, but at Graceworks, again, we're grounded in the belief that all people are valued, despite what they've done. We are a full restorative justice organization, and what that means is we work with all three stakeholders, the victims, the offenders, and we also want to work with the communities. And so currently what we're doing is with the offenders, we have a one-day class that we teach offenders, and currently we're working with the drug court through Diversion Hub, and we're doing diversion classes. I know that this is something we're trying to work as far as pre-trial. We have had conversations with District Attorney Behenna, and she likes this program. It'd be a great program for mitigation even. And so there is a class that's available. The good thing about this program, we just finished a 20-year research study. We have a 19% recidivism rate following a 20-year study. And so what this class does, we currently are giving it to the offender. And it's helping them understand why they did what they did. They know what they did wrong, but now we're going to figure out the why. So that's one piece of Justice Center. The other piece is the victims. We want to be an organization where if you've been a victim to a crime, contact us. We want to help you with resources, wraparound services. And then as far as the community side, we want to bring in community conversations. We want to bring in healing circles. And so there's a bunch of things we want to do with the Graceworks Justice Center. But our goal is to meet the needs of all three stakeholders.
When you talk about offender, the first thing that comes to my mind is there a list of offenses that you're like, no, those leave those out. We'll deal with these offenses and these offenders, but not those offenders that did those things.
So here's what I will tell you. At Graceworks, we will serve every person. Now, what that looks like may be different. Sometimes a lot of people are worried about sex offenders. And we will still have classes. So we have classes specifically for sex offenders. And so we will serve all of them. It just may look different. Yeah.
And so just getting started, tell me what success looks like for Graceworks. If we because here's what, when I've talked to people about restorative practices in schools, which I'm kind of a fan of. If every teacher, if every adult, if every person in the system doesn't support the practice, it seems to fall apart.
It does. I think if you have the majority of the people on board, you can work it. When people understand what it's really doing and they see the success, it's hard to say no to restorative practices. Again, it's the mindset of people, when they say no to restorative justice, it's because they think it's soft on crime or soft on discipline. It's actually harder for the offender going through a restorative justice cycle. And it's better for the victim because they're being heard.
What does success look like for Graceworks? And how do you know you've got there? Success.
All three stakeholders are getting what they need and becoming better. So if you're a victim of a crime, we want you to be better than you were. We want to give you the resources. We want to give you the things so that you don't become an offender. Because often when you are a victim to something, often you offend. It's it's give and take. So being able to meet the needs of all, ideally, what I want to see is instead of us being reactive in our criminal justice system, we need to be putting the money proactively into our schools to give our kids the emotional hygiene that they need so that they do make better decisions. And so that's what success looks like to me. I believe that when I leave this world, if I can say that I added a step on the ladder, then I've done something right. I want to leave this place better than it was. Again, I've come a long ways over the last 30 years. I was not this same person 30 years ago. And what I can tell you is if I can change my mindset, anybody can.
Right.
And so success looks like
we don't want to wait 30
want.
years for them to change their mind.
Immediately.
We don't want. Yeah,
absolutely.
So the bang for the buck here, just to kind of sum it up, the bang for the buck is victims will now get to be a part of the process on what it means to become restored? Like, how
I
do
am
you
able
fix
to tell
my
you-
fence
I'm able to tell you what I need to be better.
to be better? You tore down my fence.
This is what I need to
This
be
is what
repaired.
I need to be repaired.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. And on the other side of this story is the offender is now learning why he broke the fence.
He broke the fence. He knows why he broke the fence, but he also needs to ensure that he's repairing the harm that he did to those people.
Right.
Because often we are hurting people and it has nothing to do with them.
Because he understands this and goes through this process, he doesn't reoffend. He goes back,
Recidivism's gone.
is gone. And so the state, the community is now saving money, and you're saying
lot of
that money should go back to the schools to teach
So
them.
that we can break the cycle of when we are, when we are predicting prison numbers on third grade reading scores, that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's a problem. That tells me where we're headed as a state. We need to change that mentality and give the kids what they really need. I can look at a 5-year-old walking down my hallway, and if somebody doesn't intervene quickly, they're going to be an offender.
Right.
And that's sad.
Right, right. And emotional hygiene is one key to that.
It's a big piece.
Big piece.
Anger is a secondary emotion, and we've got to talk about it.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right, tell us how we get connected with you, how they learn more about Graceworks, how they volunteer, how do they work
yes.
with you, how do they get the classes, anything you need to tell them.
So the one thing I didn't talk about, the one unique thing about this program, especially with the offenders, is we utilize former justice involved trainers to help train this class. And so again, they're giving back to the community and continuing to work with other offenders. But again, Graceworks Justice Center, if you go to GraceworksRestorativePractices.com, that is our website, and there's a victim resource, there's offender resources, there's community resources. As far as schools are concerned, we actually have trainings for staff. We have some alternatives to suspension programs that are on that website. You can also go to our Facebook, Graceworks Restorative Practices, or you can actually contact us at 405-613-7482.
Sounds good. I appreciate you being
you.
here and giving us the education. I feel like we only tapped the surface.
We did.
Only tapped the surface.
We would love to
Feel
have
like there's
more
a lot data.
conversations.
Yeah.
And I will say this, we are planning on doing some roundtable discussions on Zooms.
Yep.
To continue this conversation. So
Send
we
us
would
a
love
link.
to- all
Send us a
right.
link and I'll
Sounds great.
post it on my Facebook page.
Thank you.
Listen, that's it for Conversation Cupid. Listen, but I've got to ask you to do me another favor. In a couple of weeks, I'm going out to help some young men learn how to be responsible young men, right? And when I do this, I always teach them how to tie a tie. We give them a clean white shirt and we give them a tie. And I've been doing this for so many years, I'm out of ties. Can you all gather together, be a community, y'all, and get a bunch of ties? They ain't gotta be brand new. I don't want 1950 ones either. But give me some ties and send them my way. Just hit me in my DMs, send me a message, comment right here on this post, and I will come pick them up personally. I just need some ties. Thank you so much for joining Conversations with Cupid. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. 4th of July. Happy 4th and celebrate safely.